You have 24 hours to vacate this property. The voice, it just cut through the crisp mountain air, like a piece of glass dragging across a window pane. I stood there, hammer in hand, staring at the three strangers who had just walked into the house, my house, without a knock, without a word. The one in front, she was wearing a navy blazer, even though it was pushing 70 degrees, and she carried a clipboard like it was a legal writ. I'd owned the place for all of 9 days, mind you. Bought it for $5 at a county tax auction. All the paperwork clean, notarized, stamped, sitting right there in my glove box. Apparently, none of that mattered to the Queen of Maplewood Heights, but let me back up, because this story, it starts with a promise. 7 months before that woman walked through my door, I was sitting in a hospital room, watching the light slowly fade from my wife, Ilara. Ilara was my anchor, an architectural historian by trade but an artist at heart. She could spend hours talking about the difference between Queen Anne and Victorian gingerbread trim, and somehow, it was never boring. She loved old buildings, not because they were fancy, but because they were stories in wood and stone. In her final weeks, when the morphine made her words slow and careful, she'd grip my hand and talk about a dream, a house high up on a mountain. Somewhere the morning light came through thick old-growth Douglas fir beams, making the whole structure glow like amber. She wanted to see something like that saved. She wanted a witness to wood and stone brought back from the edge of collapse. I promised her, whispering right into her ear, that I would find it. 3 weeks later, she was gone. I spent the next 6 months in a fog, an empty blueprint of a man. My own work. I'm an architectural investigator, a detective who uses blueprints and deed records instead of crime scene tape. It felt hollow. Every structure I documented just screamed the same truth. Time wins. Everything breaks. Then one rainy afternoon, just scrolling county auction listings, not looking for anything, just killing time. I saw it. 150-year-old mountain cabin, tax foreclosure sale, minimum bid $5. The photos were brutal. The place looked like a skeleton, walls sagging, half the roof gone, windows empty like eye sockets. But I recognized the framing in one shot. Douglas fir. Old growth. The kind of timber you literally cannot find anymore. I clicked through the records and felt a tremor in my chest. 1875, built by a silver prospector named Silas Thorne. 3.2 acres. I put in my bid that night. $5. Nobody else bid. 2 weeks later, I drove up the mountain access road with the deed in my glove box and a toolbox rattling in the bed of my old truck. The GPS died a mile before the property line. I had to navigate by an ancient survey map I'd printed. When I pulled up at dawn, the house sat there like something pulled from a fever dream. Tilted, moss-covered, but alive in the rising sun. The light slipped through the broken roof beams, catching the fir frame in gold and shadow. For the first time in 7 months, I felt it. Purpose. I walked the creaking porch, testing every board. Inside, the floor groaned, but the bones of the place were solid. The center stone fireplace, hand-cut granite blocks fitted so tight you couldn't slide a dime between them. It stood firm. I always check the foundation first. It's where you find a building's truth. I pulled the trapdoor open in the kitchen corner and climbed down into the root cellar. That's where I found it. A small copper tin box, shoved between 2 foundation stones. Inside were papers, wrapped in rotted oilcloth. The original land patent, 1875, signed by the Commissioner of the General Land Office. A hand-drawn survey map showing the exact boundaries. The federal deed itself, stamped with the eagle seal of the United States government. I knew what I was looking at. This wasn't just a property deed. This was a federal land grant. It was the kind of title that supersedes everything that came after it. I had paramount title. I stored the originals in a waterproof case in my truck, and I went back inside, starting the work, building something instead of just documenting decay. It was for Ilara, of course, but it was also for Silas Thorne, and every person who ever looked out of those empty windows at that same mountain. On the 9th day, I was measuring a window frame when I heard the vehicles pull up. 3 of them. I walked to the front door, still holding my tape measure. That's when I saw her. Navy blazer clipboard, the 2 polo-shirted acolytes behind her. The shirts read, Maplewood Heights Preservation Association, HOA. She looked at me like I was a piece of debris she needed to scrape off her bespoke loafers. This land belongs to the association, she said, her voice dripping with unchallenged authority. You are in violation of 14 covenants. Remove all structures and vacate immediately, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Her name was Senator Claudia Thorne. Yes, Thorne. A very interesting coincidence. President of the Maplewood Heights HOA, 12 years running. I pulled the county deed from my back pocket. She barely glanced at it. Tax auction sales don't override association jurisdiction. This land has been under our management since 1998. I just held my deed in one hand. 5. I looked back at her. I think there's been a mistake. She smiled. It was cold, predatory. The only mistake here is yours, mister. She paused, looking at her clipboard like my name was an inconvenience. Fairchild, 24 hours. After that, we call the sheriff. Criminal trespassing. I watched them drive away and my pulse hammered against my eardrums. I didn't know it yet. But that piece of paper in my truck, the 1875 federal land patent, was about to become the single most important weapon in the longest legal fight of my life. I spent the night digging on my laptop. Maplewood Heights HOA, page after page of one-star reviews, complaints about arbitrary fines, threats of legal action over paint colors that were 2 shades off the approved palette, and at the center of it all, that same name, Senator Claudia Thorne, 12 years. No elections, just her, tightening the screws. The next morning, I did what I should have done immediately. I called Lenora Briggs, Ilara's friend, a 69-year-old semi-retired real estate attorney, and the sharpest legal mind I'd ever met. "Come to my office," she said, cutting me off before I was half done. "Bring every document you have." Exactly 24 hours after Claudia's ultimatum, I heard the vehicles. Multiple engines, a sheriff's cruiser, Claudia's black SUV, and 2 HOA pickup trucks. Sheriff Dale Merrick, a weathered man in his 50s, got out first. Claudia, with that same cold smirk, followed. "Sheriff, what's this about?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Mr. Fairchild, I got a call about a trespassing situation. Ms. Thorne claims you're occupying association property without authorization." I held up my county deed. "Sheriff, I own this land. Purchased it legally. Here's the documentation." Claudia stepped forward. "The auction was invalid. HOA jurisdiction is..." I reached into my shirt pocket, pulled out the land patent. I opened my laptop on Lenora's desk, played the footage on her big monitor. We watched in silence as Claudia Thorne and the man she called Russell Kingsley, owner of Kingsley Development, moved across my land, bathed in that spectral infrared glow. When Russell's voice came through, talking about the 3 million gemstone deposit, Lenora's jaw tightened. When Claudia talked about clearing the title so his development company could move in, I saw the fire light up in Lenora's eyes. "This changes everything," she finally said. "This is not a property dispute. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, and we have it all on tape." Lenora pulled up a property database. Russell Kingsley, 7 properties in Maplewood Heights, bought through foreclosure or forced sale in the last 5 years. All sold to Kingsley Development within 6 months of the HOA filing complaints against the previous owners. "She's been doing this," Lenora whispered, more to herself than to me. "She targets properties, manufactures violations, pressures the owners until they give up and sell cheap, then flips them to Kingsley. It's a system, a profitable one. We're not looking at fraud, Owen. We're looking at racketeering." 2 weeks later, the cease and desist letter came, $45,000 in fines for 18 violations. Lenora told me, "You do not respond. You do not engage. Every claim is based on the assumption they have jurisdiction. They don't. We're not playing their game. We're building our own case." But the harassment escalated. A social media group popped up, "Save Our Maplewood Community." My house, from the worst possible angle, became the profile picture. The caption, "Out-of-town investor buys historic land for pennies, plans to demolish and develop, destroying our mountain heritage." Then, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Lenora told me to attend and record everything. I walked in late. Every head swiveled toward me. Claudia was at the front, next to her high-priced attorney. She began her presentation, showing the unflattering photo of my house, listing the 18 violations. "We propose," she announced, her voice confident and rehearsed, "to reclaim the property for community use and compensate Mr. Fairchild $10,000. Applause broke out. I stayed silent, recording. Then a voice cut through the noise. "How can the HOA claim eminent domain over land that was never part of the association?" Mrs. Ashford, the older woman, stood up in the back, a heavy file in her hand. "I was on the founding board in '98. That property was never included in our charter." "I have the original right here." Claudia froze. The boundaries were updated in 2003. No, they weren't, Mrs. Ashford interrupted. No boundary changes were ever approved. If you're claiming jurisdiction over property that is not actually under HOA control, that's fraud. The word hung in the air. Claudia's face was fiery red. Her attorney was whispering urgently. I don't think we should table anything, I said, standing up. I walked down the aisle toward the front, pulling up the land patent photo on my phone. My name is Owen Fairchild, I said, my voice cutting through the buzzing room. And I'd like to clear up a few things. I reached the front table, stood directly opposite Claudia Thorne. First, I held up the phone, the 1875 date glowing on the screen. I am not violating any HOA covenants because this property isn't part of the HOA. It never was. This is a federal land patent, paramount title. The HOA has no authority over my land. None, Claudia scoffed. Fabrication. You're creating a scene, am I? I clicked my phone, projecting the next image onto the screen behind her. The security footage. 2:00 a.m. Claudia and Russell bathed in infrared. I unmuted the video. Russell's voice boomed through the speakers. The survey confirms it. Gemstone deposit runs right under this section. Preliminary assessment puts it at $3 million. The room was dead silent. People were staring, open-mouthed at the screen. Claudia's voice followed. And he has no idea. Bought it for $5. He thinks it's just an old house. The footage ended. I clicked to the next slide. The chart of the 7 properties sold to Kingsley Development. I looked directly into her eyes, leaning slightly over the table. This isn't about community standards, Senator Thorne. This is about money. $3 million in gemstones under my land. And who knows how much from the other properties you forced people off of with your fraudulent fines. She jumped up, her chair scraping. Slander! You're manipulating evidence. The footage is timestamped and certified, Lenora said, rising slowly beside me. We have testimony from multiple previous victims. We have financial records showing payments from Kingsley Development to an LLC registered in your name. This isn't slander, Miss Thorne. This is evidence. The room exploded. People were screaming at Claudia, demanding she resign. Board members started walking out. Her attorney grabbed his briefcase and fled. Claudia stood there, abandoned, her face pale, before she too finally bolted. Mrs. Ashford handed me her file, the original undisputed HOA documents. Give her hell, she said. She did the same thing to me. Lenora and I drove 3 hours to the Bureau of Land Management. The federal records specialist, a man who had seen it all, studied the patent. Still active, never voided. A perfected patent, he confirmed. This document predates statehood. No HOA, no local government, no state entity can override it. We'll give you a certified true copy. It'll hold up in any court in the country. We walked out of that building with a stack of papers that felt like they weighed a ton. We're filing in federal district court, Lenora declared, writing furiously on her legal